going on, everyone, and welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show. Thank you all for being patient with me. Obviously, finals week has all college kids stressed out, and, it's that time of year. Tests are here, and it's a shit show, like usual, but hey, that's what we signed up for when we go to college, so thank you all for being patient with me. I apologize for no episode last week, but I'm glad to be back, and this episode's going to be a good one. So what are we going to get into today? Well, there's a lot happening in the sports world, that's for sure. When it comes to college football, when it comes to the NFL, there is just so much stuff going on, and we're going to cover a little bit of it today. Now, obviously, I'm recording this on Friday. NFL games have already happened with the Chargers and Raiders this past week. I'll get into that game. And obviously, Sunday, NFL season winding down to a close, and the playoff race is kind of crazy right now. So we're going to go over some of the news that's going on in the college football and NFL world right now. So first off, I want to go over the Cleveland Browns. They just struck gold when it comes to quarterback play. I have never seen Joe Flacco play like this. It's been since 11 years since Joe Flacco and the Ravens won the Super Bowl. Beat the 49ers in the power outage game in that Super Bowl. But I am thoroughly impressed of how well the Browns are playing, especially with Joe Flacco at quarterback. For the longest time, Joe Flacco was considered a pushover, especially once they drafted Lamar Jackson. Obviously, I still think Lamar is a way better quarterback than Flacco could ever imagine or could ever hope to be. But the reality is right now, I don't think anyone in the AFC can handle Cleveland. I legit think the Browns, they can make noise in the postseason this year. I seriously think the Browns are capable of beating anybody in the AFC. And that includes Kansas City, that includes Buffalo, even though Buffalo stinks right now. They are horrible. But I got to give props to the Browns, man. They struck gold with Joe Flacco. I mean, this man was literally sitting on his couch a couple weeks ago, and now all of a sudden he's thrusted into play for the Cleveland Browns, and he's really showing out right now. I mean, completion percentage is at 55%. Not great, but, it is what it is. 565 yards and 5 touchdowns, obviously, come Sunday against the Chicago Bears. That's subject to change for sure, and I seriously think they're going to do well. But just the way Joe Flacco has played, I would seriously consider moving off of Deshaun Watson right now. Now, this could be an overreaction or, an underreaction to what Joe Flacco is doing right now, but if I was Cleveland, why on earth would I continue to go with Deshaun Watson, paying him all that money? No matter what, you're going to be paying him this money. You already guaranteed it all. You're stuck with that contract. That's your hole. That's your bed. You made it. You're going to sleep in it. However, I think the Browns have, like I said, they struck gold with Joe Flacco, the way he's playing right now. So where does the Browns go? How does this affect Cleveland going forward? Well, you have to reanalyze your entire quarterback situation, of course. And I'm pretty sure that Cleveland was already doing that at some point. Obviously, Watson going out with an injury for the remainder of the year, that hurt their season. But even when Deshaun Watson was playing, it's not like that he was being otherworldly. It's not like he was competing at the level of a Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers when he's healthy and on the field, like a Josh Allen, like a Trevor Lawrence, a Joe Burrow when he's capable and not injured, like a Justin Herbert. That's how Watson was not playing like the MVP caliber quarterback he was years ago. And I've talked about this a lot of times. It's the fact that Watson is not the same player. It does something to you when you take 2 years off of a sport and then all of a sudden thrust yourself back into the mix. I'm sorry. I knew that it was going to be a bad move. I knew that he wasn't going to pan out in Cleveland. I thought they would be better than they are now, but in all intents and purposes, they should have stuck with Baker Mayfield, like I suggested before. Now, I believe it's the NFC West that the Buccaneers are in, Atlanta, Carolina, and the Saints. That division is the absolute worst in football. It makes me sick watching those games and watching those teams play. It's literally an eyesore. This might be Also, when it comes to the NFL, this might be the worst year for primetime games. I cannot tell you the last time I sat in front of the TV and actually enjoyed a Thursday night football game, a Monday night football game, or the primetime Sunday night games. I can't get behind any of it, and I don't know how to fix it. I really don't, other than putting more qualified teams to play. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in watching the Vikings and the Raiders play all damn day, play 60 minutes of football for a 3-0 win for the Vikings. When I that was the most boring game that I think anyone could ever watch. A 3-0 game, it just baffles me. It makes no sense. But back to the Cleveland situation. I seriously think it's Cleveland's conference to lose at this point. They're the most healthy out of any of these teams. I think they're the best team out of any of these teams in the AFC. If you look at Kansas City right now, yeah, it's still the Chiefs, it's still Andy Reid, it's still Patrick Mahomes. So obviously you can't count them out no matter what you do. But you got Patrick Mahomes crying like a little baby. That's another thing we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I seriously think Cleveland can make the most noise out of any AFC team for sure. Now, the question is, like I said, where do you go from here? Where do you go after the season? How do you handle Deshaun Watson? How do you handle Joe Flacco or any of the Browns quarterbacks? Well, personally, I would move off of Deshaun Watson and I would draft another quarterback. You're going to have to eat that cap anyway for releasing him or trading him or anything because you guaranteed that contract. The Haslam family guaranteed that contract, and they're stuck with it. So you better cut your losses right now. I would suggest cutting him. I really would. And then have another young quarterback, whether that be DTR or you draft another rookie quarterback, have him learn behind Flacco. I mean, this is just going to prove that veteran leadership at quarterback position is so pivotally important. I just stuttered so badly there. But, leadership at the quarterback position is so important and so vital for a team's success. Other than coaching, it's probably the second most important thing that you can have on a football team. So if I was Cleveland, I'd ride this wave. I think you can make a lot of noise in the Super Bowl to get to a Super Bowl. I really do. And I would continue to keep Joe Flacco around in that locker room. If you look at it, I think the Browns play more intense style of football. They play with more passion. They're excited. And Cleveland has every right to be excited. They're easily the team to beat in the AFC right now. And I don't think it's necessarily particularly close, especially with the Browns' statistically best defense of all time, and Myles Garrett, of course. So props to Cleveland. They're finally using David Njoku. It's almost like a good quality tight end is needed. It's almost like you needed a quarterback to finally get Njoku the ball for him to be effective. And look what happens. 2 touchdowns last week. Well, this would be 2 weeks ago, but they're finally using David Njoku, which I appreciate. One of my favorite tight ends in the league, one of my favorite players in the league. It's always a pleasure watching him play. But Cleveland, you have a lot going for you. I would continue to ride this wave. And like I said, I would cut Deshaun Watson, get him out of town, just get rid of him. You're going to be paying him anyway, so you might as well cut your losses now and then have Joe Flacco mentor DTR or any other rookie quarterback that you plan to bring in. So let's transition to something else. Obviously, people are still butthurt about, mainly Florida State fans. Obviously, there is still controversy behind the College Football Playoff Committee and the decision they made to leave an undefeated Florida State team out. Now, I went on a tangent about this in my last episode when I discussed the entire playoff committee. Since its inception, it's about getting the 4 best teams in the college football playoff. It's not the most deserving. If it was the most deserving, guess what? Florida State would be in. But the College Football Playoff Committee did not make it that way. They made it to get the best 4 teams in college football going at it for the national championship. And like it or not, it's also a business decision because do you really want to watch another Georgia TCU kind of national championship? a 65 or 68-7 game, whatever it was. That was the only national championship I can remember that I turned off and didn't watch the rest of the game. Me and my buddy went to a cigar lounge and watched the game. We left at halftime because it was that much of a shit show of a game. College football is a business still. They're going to run it like a business, and they don't need anybody turning their TVs off at the end of the first quarter or at the end of the half. That's just the reality of it. College football is a business, and it will always be treated like one. Do I think it's fair? No. Obviously, it's not fair. And obviously, next year we're expanding to a 12-team playoff. So no matter what, like I said before, whoever is left out, whoever's the first person left out, is going to feel like they deserve to be in some way, somehow. It doesn't matter. Even next year in the 12-team playoff, there will be teams that will continue to try to make their argument that their team should be in the college football playoff. Is it going to pan out? No, because the reality is you got to get the best teams going at it for the national championship to avoid another disaster like TCU getting boat raced by Georgia by 60, okay? That's not something we want to see again. So why am I bringing this up again? Here's what I don't get. Yes, it's controversial, but Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, that she announced about 2 weeks ago that she is launching an investigation into the College Football Playoff Committee and their selection decision to leave Florida State out of it. I just don't understand it. I really don't. This is how butthurt you guys are. This is seriously what your team is doing, what your state is doing. And I love Florida, not the Gators. I'm a Hurricane like always, but this has gotten so out of hand that the Attorney General of Florida is literally filing an investigation against the College Football Playoff Committee. Now, the main reason like this, this is from thehill.com. In a news release, Moody said that her office's antitrust division will send a civil investigation demand to the committee for more information about the nature of possible contracts, conspiracies, in restraint of trade, or monopolization of trade and commerce relating to anti-competitive effects of the college football playoff. At this point, I don't even know what to say because this is just getting so out of hand. What is going to come of this investigation? I really don't think there's much. Is the NCAA corrupt? Yes. This business has done shady shit for so long, it's not even funny. And the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be affiliated with the NCAA. Is there shady shit going on? Most likely. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. Because like I said in previous episodes, the NCAA doesn't care about its athletes. They just care about their bottom line. They just care about their bottom dollar. It doesn't matter to them. The well-being of the kids, forget that. They don't care about that whatsoever. My issue with this whole thing is you are seriously going to file an investigation into the playoff committee's decision-making? Really? That's where we're going with this? It makes no sense to me. And one of the voices of college football, Kirk Herbstreit, this man went straight at Florida State. And I'm going to read his tweet because it's actually fantastic of how bad that Herbstreit toasted Florida State and its fan base. So obviously Florida State fans are posting all the time about, why their team was left out. They feel snubbed. They deserve to be in. And Kirk Herbstreit tweeted, because Alabama is better, period. So is Texas. So is Michigan. So is Washington. So is Oregon. So is Georgia. I watch 10 to 15 games a week live from September, early December. I think I'm allowed to have an opinion on who I think is better. If FSU doesn't like this, if FSU doesn't like the best four, tell the conference commissioners to change the protocol to most deserving. Until then, I and everyone else is certainly allowed to give an opinion in a subjective discussion. Don't like it, change it. I'll put up the obviously, I'll let you guys read the whole tweet for yourselves, but this is the exact point that I've been making for a long time when it comes to the college football playoff. It's not the four most deserving teams. If you want to make that argument for most deserving, you got to make the argument for TCU back in 2014. You got to make an argument for, I believe it was either 2015 or 2017, 2015 or 2016 Baylor, the one with, I believe it was Seth Russell at quarterback. I don't remember too well, but I do remember Baylor was snubbed. They were at the 5 spot. They were left out of the college football playoff. You can make the argument that UCF was University of Central Florida was deserving to be in. So I don't get where this argument is coming from still. It's still the 4 best teams in the college football playoff. That's it. Not most deserving. We thought TCU was deserving when the national championship and the college football playoff commenced last year. We saw this. The committee put TCU in. I did not think TCU was one of the 4 best teams in college football. I really didn't. They lost their conference championship, if I remember correctly, to Kansas State. So I don't even think they deserve to be in. So here we are. They put TCU in. So we'll, have to test the waters and see what happens. Maybe it would be good for college football. Maybe it wouldn't. Turned out to be good at first. They actually went in and beat Michigan. They beat Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy, and Michigan. Just stomped them for the most part of that game. That game was not as close as the final score, said. So at first, you're thinking, okay, we can do something like this. And then the national championship commences. Boat raced by Georgia by 60. Do you really think the college football playoff committee, or even the fans, like me, like all of you, do you really want to see another national championship like TCU in Georgia? I could tell you right now, no. I'm not one of those people. I will never be a fan of that, seeing a blowout in a national championship game. I want games like LSU and Clemson. I want games like that. Other than that, I could care less. I want to see Bama against Georgia. I want to see a Washington with the best offense in college football go up against Texas. First of all, it's great having those brands in. A lot of brand recognition when it comes to those two schools. But I want to see Michigan, J.J. McCarthy and John Harbaugh going up against Alabama and Nick Saban and Jalen Milroe. I want to see all that. I want to see big-time schools with big-time talent. I want NFL guys on the field when it comes to playing for the college football playoff. I want to see all that. I don't want to see a TCU team with one NFL player on it who turns out to be a bust in the NFL right now. I don't want to see that crap anymore, and neither should any of you. So this whole discussion about Florida State still deserving to be in, it's a terrible argument to make. It makes no sense. Sorry, Florida State, I wouldn't even consider you guys a top 10 team right now. I'm not going to like you whatsoever because of Miami, but the reality is that you're not one of the top 4 teams in this country anymore. Sorry, that's just the way it goes. Cry yourself a river. So we're going to transition into something else, and something I've been on for a while. The Chargers, the entire Chargers organization, they are probably the worst run franchise in the NFL as of right now. But finally, they did something I didn't think they were going to end up doing. They finally fired Brandon Staley as head coach. It was about time, and it was a long time coming. Statistically, the Chargers defense is one of the worst in NFL history. And in the NFL, the Chargers have the most expensive defense. You got guys like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, great linebackers, Derwin James at safety, and this defense can't stop a nosebleed. This was such a long time coming. It makes me sick, honestly, that it took. The game against the Raiders was the capstone. I knew right then and there is no way Brandon Staley could have a job the day after a performance like that. I'm pretty sure the Chargers' entire organization, the entire team, has just quit on him. The Raiders went up against the Minnesota Vikings the previous week and lost 3-0 to the Vikings. They didn't score a single point in that game. But the second they got their hands on the Chargers defense, the Raiders look like the greatest show on turf. 63-21. Are you kidding me? I don't get how you... Okay, listen, I get it. As a professional athlete, you would be pissed off at your coach. He's been, calling the defense the entire time he's been there. He hasn't showed any improvement. As a matter of fact, he showed regression. Massive, massive regression on that side of the ball. Obviously, it doesn't help that Justin Herbert is lost for the year. That's another big factor. And to all those people who were saying this is all Justin Herbert's fault, you are full of shit. You see what your team is like without Justin Herbert. You guys can't even compete against the Raiders. Never mind your defense. Your defense stinks. We all knew this. We knew this coming into the year, but I don't think any of us could have predicted of exactly how bad your defense was going to be. It drives me insane, man. It really does. Watching games like this, it makes my head hurt. It's good for fantasy. It's good for, DraftKings and FanDuel. It's good for sports betting if you're a gambler, but this isn't just not a good product to put out on the field. The Chargers need to go big when it comes to another head coaching hire. And call me crazy. Obviously, Bill Belichick's time in New England is coming. And I think he's done after this year. Now, the Spanos family has always been notorious for not paying head coaches, for good quality head coaches. They've always done this experimental BS that has not turned out well for them at all. As we can see, Brandon Staley fired and the general manager, Tom Telesco, fired, and he's the one who hired Brandon Staley, so naturally made sense. I mean, he's done a good job somewhat at drafting talent, but you can't be the guy to hire Brandon Staley and you're going to get, unscathed with all this. So Brandon Staley out, Tom Telesco out. Where do the Chargers go from here? I think you should hire Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick can't draft skill positions to save his life. We already know this. New England's wide receivers and skill position players are literally some of the worst in the league. Now, obviously, they're not horrible because they're playing in the NFL, but when it comes to the quality of talent on the New England roster, they don't have much to work with. Now, obviously, they got Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones at quarterback, which that's not great to even start off with, so it is what it is. But Bill Belichick alone has single-handedly went downhill. The whole argument, who needed who, did Brady need Belichick or did Belichick need Brady? Well, it's kind of clear of who won that battle. Bill Belichick is a sub-500 head coach without Tom Brady now. So Tom Brady can hang his hat on that. But if I were the Chargers, if I were the Spanos family, I'd swallow my pride and finally quit being such cheap assholes and go actually spend money on a good quality head coach. Now, do I think Bill Belichick has his problems? Yes. I wouldn't make him general manager, but he can definitely coach. I'm sorry, I get it. New England isn't what they were before. They did have the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady for that stretch and winning 6 rings for them. But I'm still going to take the guy who coached all those teams over anyone else when it comes for the Chargers. I think Bill Belichick to the Chargers makes sense, but I don't think the Spanos family is willing to cough up that kind of dough to pay Bill Belichick. Because I know for a fact he's going to want to get paid. It's not going to be some cheap shit. So if I'm the Chargers, you better pray Justin Herbert comes back well and healthy next year. You better hope he's still the same player, which I think he will be. Obviously, it's surgery on his index finger, but then again, it's surgery nonetheless, so obviously he's got to come back for that, and I think he will. I still think Justin Herbert's a top 10 quarterback in this league. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that it was partially his fault when it comes to the Chargers' shortcomings. That's not the case whatsoever, because we see what the Chargers are without Justin Herbert. They're awful. They're unwatchable. This was a disgrace to watch. This was a true eyesore. Again, you lost to a team that didn't sniff the end zone or sniff any points when they played the Vikings, but as soon as they got their hands on the Chargers defense, they did whatever they wanted with them. 63-21 speaks for itself. 42-0 at halftime. How pathetic can you be as a team? I don't get it. But honestly, it was a long time coming. I'm surprised Brandon Staley still had a job weeks ago. The Chargers are probably the biggest disappointment in the NFL, at least this season. And I had high hopes for them, but it turns out that Brandon Staley could not right the ship at all. You know, he's not a leader of men. He didn't galvanize the troops. He didn't do anything to better that franchise. He literally turned that defensive talent into probably statistically the worst defense to ever be put out on a football field. So, Brandon Staley out, Tom Telesco out after 63-21 ass whooping to the hands of the Raiders. Good for the Raiders, but man, Chargers, go spend money on a real head coach. You guys need a Bill Belichick. Or if you're willing to even pay more, which most likely not, because you're clueless when it comes to spending money like that, go out and get Jim Harbaugh if he's actually serious about leaving Michigan. I doubt that, but with enough money, I'm sure you could probably sway Jim Harbaugh. But again, the Spanos family is cheap. They're never gonna overcome that stereotype of just being cheap and poorly run. So, Chargers, go out and spend money on a real head coach this time. No more experiments. You can't waste Justin Herbert's career anymore. Your Super Bowl window will be closing really, really, really quickly if you don't hire the red head coach. And I want to transition into something else. And here's why it is very important to be very mindful of who you're paying. To be very mindful of who you're paying as the front office and as the organization, your quarterback. Obviously, you want to lock in a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Jalen Hurts. Obviously, you want to lock in those guys for a long-ass time so they're there to, probably produce Super Bowls for your entire franchise. However, we're seeing what happens when you give a quarterback the bag. I fully support giving a quarterback the bag. I fully support giving the quarterback the type of money they deserve to lock them in for years on end. But when you pay that level of a contract, when you pay all that money, you have to kneecap yourself. You have to get cheaper at other spots of the field. And we're watching it with the Kansas City wide receiving group. We're watching it live for the whole world to see of how much of a garbage shit show it is. It's a literal dumpster fire when it comes to the Chiefs and their wide receiving core. Obviously, they still have Travis Kelce. That's important. But their wide receivers are absolutely god-awful. Stone hands all the way around. Kind of like me in high school. Couldn't catch a ball to save my life, apparently. As my friends like to say. They called me stone hands all the time. But when it comes to everything else that happened, especially recently, Kansas City is very upset about the loss against Buffalo still. And Pat Mahomes cried like a little baby when it happened. Kadarius Toney lined up off sides. He was clearly off sides. It was clearly a penalty. The officials made the right call. Now, officials sometimes swallow the whistle and hold the flags. They sometimes just let it play out. I'm sorry. Kadarius Toney was so blatantly off sides that if they missed that call, they would have been under fire by the league, by all the players, by the fans. I'm sorry. The officials made the right call in throwing that penalty flag 2 weeks ago. The fact that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid can sit up there and constantly argue the fact that that was a BS call, that that's bad for the game and everything, how idiotic can you be? Listen, if you had a Tyreek Hill, it wouldn't be the same situation. It just wouldn't be, because he would actually be catching the ball for you guys. I'm sorry. None of these Chiefs wide receivers are any good for you. And that's why Kansas City is significantly vulnerable. And I don't think they can make much noise in the AFC specifically because of that. I don't think the Chiefs can beat a Baltimore. Obviously, they can't beat Buffalo, but Buffalo's got its own issues, that's for sure. But the whole notion that you have to give the quarterback the bag to be successful in this league is, obviously it's partially true, but at the same time, like I said, you kneecap yourself in other aspects of the game. And we're seeing it unfold live and on TV each and every week with the misdeeds of the Kansas City wide receiving corps. So that is what it is, unfortunately. I don't know where you go from here, Kansas City. Maybe restructure Patrick Mahomes' contract again and go out and get a wide receiver, like a good quality number one wide receiver in free agency this year, or draft one of the studs coming out for college. But overall, you're in some deep shit when it comes to this wide receiving situation. You're in some treacherous waters paying Patrick Mahomes all this money and having to get cheap and younger at other positions. That's just the way it is. That's just the way everything unfolds. But, there's always positives and negatives to everything. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is probably the greatest quarterback talent we've probably ever seen. But at the same time, you're kneecapping your franchise because you're paying him the bag and there's not enough money to go around for everyone. So you got to get younger, and that's cheaper. And oftentimes it's not panning out. And right now, it is not panning out for Kansas City. Okay, some funny thing I want to bring up. Daniel Jones, obviously quarterback for the Giants. He got the bag last year, and everybody knows that he shouldn't. Everybody knows he's not worth that kind of money. But Tommy DeVito, undrafted out of Illinois, he is playing lights-out football right now for the G-Men. That's for sure. 65.9% completion percentage, 855 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's it. Tommy DeVito is looking like a quality quarterback right now. And I'm going to put his face up on the screen for you guys, but I swear, Tommy DeVito's agent, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. He looks like a 1920s wise guy. He knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who's got a guy. That's Tommy DeVito's agent. This is just hysterical. I love it. I think it's it's just one of the most interesting things I've seen in recent memory when it comes to the NFL. But in all honesty, I think the Giants, they do have a situation they have to think about, that's for sure. You're paying Daniel Jones all this money, but Tommy DeVito is playing lights out football at quarterback for the G-Men. Is it that crazy to think that now maybe this can be like a Nick Foles type of situation where I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I'm saying come in and just win you a couple games. I think Tommy DeVito is playing better than that, and I think the Giants have a legit quarterback competition on hands. Now, I don't think I would get rid of Daniel Jones, but if I'm the Giants organization, if I'm head coach Brian Daboll, I'm making that quarterback room well aware that the position's open. It's up for grabs. It's going to be a full-on showdown for who gets the starting job next year. And honestly, I'm obviously going to lean Tommy DeVito. I think he galvanizes the troops better. I think he's more of a leader than Daniel Jones. I do think he's a better quarterback overall than Daniel Jones. I'm sorry, Daniel Jones is not a first round quarterback. He hasn't lived up to that potential whatsoever. But I believe Tommy DeVito is, while he may not be Tom Brady, he's probably not going to be one of the greatest of all time, but I think the Giants have something when it comes to the quarterback position, especially going into next year. Yeah, even though you're paying Daniel Jones all this money, if I'm Brian Daboll, I'm making that quarterback position wide open. I'm making that a showdown. It's open up for grabs for whoever the best candidate is. So, and I think Tommy DeVito would probably win that. This has to be kind of demoralizing for Daniel Jones watching, and he was a first-round quarterback, and he's been stinking up the joint for years on end right now, and his undrafted backup comes in and is absolutely dominating. Giants have not lost a game with him under center yet. Now that's subject to change after they play the Saints on this past Sunday. So that's open to change, but the Giants have something here at quarterback. The wise guy, Tommy DeVito, and his agent, that's just the funniest thing to me. Probably the funniest thing I've seen in the NFL. Like, who dresses like that? Like, that's the most mobster. That's straight out of Goodfellas, I swear. That's the craziest outfit I've ever seen, out of an agent, no less. So we're going to move on to our final topic. Pittsburgh. What are we doing? I can't stand to watch Pittsburgh anymore. I really can't. I don't think I'm going to watch another game of theirs the rest of the entire year. It's just so pitiful watching their offense. We were no good with Kenny Pickett under center. We're no good with Mitchell Trubisky under center. You might as well throw Mason Rudolph in. We just signed Trace McSorley to the practice squad. Hell, bring him up off the practice squad and just throw him in. Have him play, because at least he can run around like a deer. Pittsburgh's offense is literally the most pathetic thing I've ever watched on TV. Between the Chargers defense and the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, I have no clue who's worse at what they do. Pittsburgh is absolutely abysmal. Absolutely abysmal on offense. It's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy watching them play. And I don't know where you go from here. I really don't. I can tell you my suggestion of what I would want Pittsburgh to do. Now, Pittsburgh fans, especially some of my Pittsburgh friends, they're probably going to disagree with me on this, but right now, the 2024 draft order, Chicago's at 1, New England at 2, Arizona at 3, Washington at 4, Chargers at 5, Chicago at 6, New York at 7. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm getting on the phone with a New England, an Arizona, a Washington, a Chargers. I'm getting on the phone with them. I'm offering them Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I love Minkah, but he hasn't really done anything for us this year. I am offering them Minkah, 2 first-rounders, and maybe a second-rounder for one of those picks to get Michael Penix Jr. or any of those other stud quarterbacks that are coming out right now. So I don't know where, our tradition has always been Super Bowls. Our standard has always been Super Bowls. The standard is the standard. Guess what? I love Coach Tomlin, but the standard needs to fucking change right now. The standard needs to change. I can't stand watching this. I don't care about a winning record anymore. I would rather us tank the rest of the year, get a top 10 pick, trade up, and possibly get a Michael Penix, a Caleb Williams, any of those, a Drake May, any of those guys coming out. The standard is the standard. Well, when the standard is just a winning season, sorry, that's not good enough, especially for a franchise notoriously, glorified like the Pittsburgh Steelers. The standard has always been Super Bowls. And right now, the Steelers' standard is winning season, just getting by. So time will tell what will come out of this. I really want Pittsburgh just to own up to every mistake that they've made. Don't tell us we don't have weapons. Don't tell us our offensive line is absolute garbage, because it's not. More than adequate, more than capable weapons. George Pickens we don't even use him. We're like Atlanta not using Kyle Pitts or Bijan Robinson. It's like, what are we doing? George Pickens has the potential to be an absolute stud in this league, and we're just not giving him the ball. Now, obviously, he complains a lot, but, with the quarterback play going on and the play calling happening, it's just ridiculous. I absolutely can't stand watching Pittsburgh anymore. So, yeah, the standard is the standard, but guess what? The standard right now is losing to shitty teams like Arizona and New England and just squeaking by getting an above 500 record. I'm sorry, but the standard needs to change. No more winning season talk. I don't care about winning seasons. Super Bowl or nothing. That's how Pittsburgh should act, no matter what. So if I'm Pittsburgh, if I'm the front office, I'm trading away Minkah Fitzpatrick. I love Minkah, but you can always get more safeties in the league. Quarterback talent is the hardest thing to find. Safeties, you can find plenty of them in the draft, free agency. There's plenty of safeties out there that are competent. Maybe not to the level of Minkah, but pretty damn good enough to play. So I'm offering Minkah 2 first-rounders, maybe an offensive weapon, or maybe a second-round pick. So time will tell, but if I'm Pittsburgh, the standard has to change. No more winning season crap anymore. It's got to be Super Bowl. Super Bowl or nothing. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being patient with me. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up, so